Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey into a world both distant and terrifying, where history is no longer just dusty pages, but a cold breath seeping into every corner of your mind. You awaken in a windowless chamber, its damp stone walls closing in, the smell of sweat and olive oil weaving a dark shroud over your skin. The clinking of iron chains echoes like the heartbeat of a hope long lost. You wouldn't last a single day, yet that very thought keeps you rooted here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you, because every comment lights up our shared adventure. Picture yourself draped in a thin, ragged tunic, flickering candlelight dancing before your eyes, and the soft hum of a fan brushing against your skin like a midnight whisper. That sound, a blend of eerie and comforting, becomes both your companion and your challenge. Do you dare to let go of the past? The glow of lanterns pales against the darkness, each footstep resonating over cold stone, pulling you deeper into the tales of forgotten souls. Every detail, from the peeling lime on the walls to the ragged breath of a chained captive, is a perfect puzzle piece designed to evoke that inescapable dread. Yet within that darkness, we will discover a tiny flicker of hope. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken slowly, like a weary soul just crawling out of a bizarre dream. You open your eyes to find no window frame to view the outside world, only four rough, cold stone walls streaked with green moss. The air is thick, as if intent on choking your lungs, the sweat of those who came before still lingering, mingled with the sharp tang of olive oil. Your feet sink into the damp, mouldy straw on the floor, each toe pressing into decayed hay. The straw mattress caves beneath your weight with every movement, not a place for sleep but a silent torture device, redolent of charred straw and broken grain. Beneath your heel, you feel the fresh nick where the rusted iron shackle around your ankle has gouged your flesh all night. You shake your head, trying to clear the dizziness as a damp, musty cloth is thrown beside you. Bending down to pick it up, its coldness seeps through your bare skin, climbing until it brushes your neck. Your breath catches, yet you must obediently wash yourself under the unspoken command, hands trembling as you scrub. Each scrub carries the scent of low-grade soap, reminding you of last night's brutal lashings. Echoing through the stone corridor comes the crack of a leather sandal, each step a funeral bell. You hear the jailer's measured approach, his heavy stride marking time. The air seems to hold still. You feel your heart pound as if it might burst. You know you have no choice. You must rise, wrap the thin, tattered cloth around your body, and bow your head for orders. You take a deep breath, forcing calm into your racing mind, though inside chaos and hunger gnaw at you. Yet a darker dread looms. Tonight, the guests will arrive for entertainment. You recall distant laughter echoing from the main hall, the laughter of the free, poised to revel in your fear. You close your eyes and imagine the stone walls fading into flickering candlelight, the faces of revelers flushed with wine, their hands outstretched for nameless desires. This service is more than straightening cups or presenting trays. Here, service means sacrificing humanity to sate brutal power. You shiver as you remember the bruises blooming across your ribs, tattoos of leather and scorn. You realize the road before you is endless, each breath measured, each glance a potential punishment. A metallic creak rings out. The iron door swings open. A shaft of light hits your face, casting your features into stark relief. The deep lines of fear, the dark circles under your eyes. You draw in a steadying breath, mustering a calm you do not feel. Your feet scrape on the cold flagstones as you step toward the light. A beast marched from its lair. In your mind echoes a whispered taunt. You will not survive. Yet that very taunt sparks within you a small flame of resolve. Fear and pain cannot snuff out your will to remain. Wrapping the thin cloth around your shoulders, you move into the new day, a day in which you must fight chains, fear, and the very soul within you. And so the journey begins, not with the blare of trumpets, but with the soft shuffle of footsteps and the quickening gasp of a spirit unwilling to yield. You gaze out over the olive groves stretching into the distance, each ancient tree standing silent as witness to fragile harvests. You recall your mother crouching by the stone mill, beads of sweat on her brow as her hands slowly crushed the brittle grain. The drought in this valley lingers for not weeks but months, like an executioner's sentence hovering over every family. The barley withers to brittle stalks, each head scattering like dried tears across the cracked earth. Once, your family still tended a few goats and sheep, but the relentless drought starves the flock until only hollow bones remain. You remember watching the weak goats stumble through the parched fields, collapsing from exhaustion. First the old goats, then the lambs, images now only shadows in your mind. You heard your father's hurried footsteps leading the last goat from the pen, your heart tightening with each fading bleat. The family's final possessions were never coin but small heirlooms. Your grandmother's silver ring, a fragment of precious cloth. You recall your mother's trembling hand handing the ring to a merchant, her eyes full of pain yet silent. You knew nothing of its true worth, only the emptiness it left inside. When the bolt of patterned fabric was weighed, your chest felt cleaved in two. The cloth was more than cloth. It was the fabric of your childhood. Then the creditor arrived. He made no demands for next season's promise, no concern for future fields. He wanted living flesh and labour. You were 12 when you first heard the phrase, service contract. It sounded like salvation from hunger, but proved to be a key to torture. The trader stood in the village square with heavy ledgers and cold iron scales. He examined your teeth with rough fingers, squeezed your arm like dough, then bargained with your father over your value as if you were grain. Your father's head lowered, a pale moonbeam illuminating tears pooling on his weathered cheeks. Your mother turned away, wiping her eyes in silence. Only the soft rustle of the ledger echoed night's hush, as if fate itself measured you in paper and ink. At 12 years old, you became merchandise your worth traded for 20 years of toil, each coin drawn from your parents' weary sweat. You set out for the city on that fateful journey, burdened by more than a bundle of belongings. A line of chained captives filed along the red dirt road, olive trees bowing overhead as though mourning. You learned to match your breath to the rattle of iron links. You paced the path by counting each stumble of the boy behind you. With every jangle of chain, you felt freedom slip further from your grasp. Night's chill crept beneath your thin tunic, your breath thawing in the cold air like mist on stone. You tried to recall the days you ran free among the olive groves, the babbling stream, the scent of crushed leaves, birdsong at dawn. Those memories seem a distant land now, another life. Yet deep within you, a spark of hope remains, a promise that one day someone will see you as human, not property. The line moves past silent villages. You hear traders haggling, distant laughter echoing off the walls. You realize that freedom in books was an illusion. This is life's true harshness, where survival depends on another's cruelty. As you near the city gates, you sense a new chapter of tragedy, awaiting a chapter of lost identity, of confronting the merciless splendor hidden behind gilded facades. You pause for a moment, looking up at the night sky through a gap in thatch. The stars flicker like distant tears. You vow to yourself, though I am bound, though I become property, I remain me. And in that resolve, you clutch the fragile thread of humanity that has yet to be severed. The chains jingle once more, and you step forward, each footfall echoing the past's sorrow, and a fragile hope for tomorrow ready to face the debt's true price and the struggle to reclaim your soul. You sit up straight, close your eyes, inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, exhale for 8 counts, whispering to yourself, in the year 1634, at Hofburg, the imperial palace in Vienna, a cry rang out marking the beginning of the Habsburg curse. This is the historical event. Maria Anna Elizabeth of Austria, daughter of Ferdinand III, was born beneath flickering candles and the watchful gaze of court physicians. You open your eyes, imagining yourself in a small stone chamber, lit only by a dim candle and the hiss of the hearth. While other children run and play, you see little Maria Anna struggling to walk, each step a trial. Her severely curved spine forced her into a stooped posture, and her protruding jaw made eating a medical ordeal. This is no mere tale. Hofburg's archives hold side-profile portraits of Maria Anna, unearthed from the Vatican vaults only recently, you whisper. They say her spine bent from recessive genes passed down through generations of inbreeding, but some scholars argue that medieval medicine's superstitions led them to mix roosters' blood and secret salves in vain attempts to cure their princes and princesses. This strange detail comes from a newly decoded chambermaid's diary revealing the court surgeon's bizarre concoctions. You step slowly into the tiny dining room where Maria Anna was served her meticulously prepared meals. Her attendants sliced meat into fingertip-sized pieces, boiled broths to remove solids, and soaked bread in warm water before offering it to her. You stress. This was no overindulgence, but necessity. Each bite was a survival test, for one false move could choke her. Amid her physical tortures, Maria Anna's keen mind turned to books. You hear the soft rustle of pages. Hofburg's library held over 50,000 volumes, and there she discovered worlds where blood and rank meant nothing. A little-known fact, she borrowed a rare Stoic philosophy manuscript, which sustained her spirit in her darkest hours. Yet the cold reality remained. She could not escape the clandestine clinic where physicians sketched her spine's curvature on parchment, measured angles with compasses, and recorded each month's progress. Some academics still debate her exact condition. Some claim it was Blount's disease causing bone deformity. Others insist it was the result of Habsburg recessive genes. This scholarly dispute remains unresolved, though all agree she became more a medical case study than a princess. You gaze at a 19th century black and white photograph of Maria Anna curled on a cushioned chair. Her faint smile wasn't from comfort, but from inherited shame without cure. Because of inbreeding, her fertility plummeted, and all suitors withdrew at the news of her medical condition. You note, no wedding proposals reached her, though she was of noble birth. All retreated once they learned of Maria Anna's state. You pause, inviting the listener to inhale 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, exhale for 8 counts, feeling the loneliness echo in the empty palace. Then you continue softly. She bore isolation and the weight of lineage. Each cousin marriage brought hope for genetic relief, yet the cycle only deepened. You mention a controversial tidbit. Some records claim Maria Anna had a secret bond with a Habsburg medical scholar who helped her study ancient genetic texts. Historians debate whether their relationship was merely solace or a desperate quest to break her curse. This rumor remains unverified, but highlights her yearning to escape genetic bondage. You slowly approach a small window-side desk where an old leather journal lies open. This is her final handwritten manuscript, you say. Scribbled. Just before Maria Anna closed her eyes at 32, the last line reads, "If anyone finds this book, know that my soul has found freedom, though my body could not. You close part 3 as the candle guttering plunges the room into darkness. Maria Anna died, but her story lives on in academic debates and hidden manuscripts. In the next part, we will meet Joanna, the Mad of Castile, where power and palace intrigue made her the tragic emblem of royal solitude. You hold silence for a moment, letting the echo of genetic woe settle before transitioning to the next chapter. You and the line of slaves trudge across the winding olive hills, each breeze stirring the scars on your flesh. The official records note that after the Battle of Cheronia in 338 before the Common Era, thousands of captives were traded throughout the Mediterranean, and you are likely one of them. The sunset's glow fades along the shore, but the cold iron shackles around your neck remain unyielding. Nature's beauty vanishes before your downward gaze, weighed down by iron chains, a copper sky, a distant glittering sea, and the grey stone road leading straight to Athens, a city praised as the cradle of democracy, yet built upon the backs of others. Within the column of captives you learn to read danger, not with your eyes but with your ears. The clinking of chains sounds like a death dirge. Every stumble of the boy behind you feels like a knife of disappointment, marking the fall of another free soul. Ancient Athenian chronicles mention that on the first night of a forced march, human merchants often pitched camps along the route, fastening extra shackles around the prisoners' necks, then either dozed or stayed awake depending on who was reveling in their own fear. As darkness falls, you remain restless, a spark of hope flickering behind your eyes. The campfire's glow reveals pale, exhausted faces, while the traders stay alert, shining lamps on you to inspect their merchandise. They sniff your scent of wine, probe your muscles, and scan your eyes for submissiveness. Few know that archaeologists have uncovered the ruins of a coastal slave market near the ancient Piraeus harbour, where Phoenician and Greek traders once bartered human lives to serve the naval fleets. You realize they are not seeking strength for ploughing fields, but pliability under command considered more valuable than mere physical power. In the darkness, you murmur the survival rules you've learned. Never meet the free man's gaze. Never speak unless spoken to. And never reveal what you understand of your fate. This is the art of conscious invisibility, helping you avoid lashes or harsh words. Yet a scholarly debate persists. Historians disagree on the proportion of slaves in Athens. Some claim that at one point, 1/3 of the population were enslaved, while others estimate under 10%. Whatever the numbers, you know the feeling of having your name erased from the rolls and reduced to an item in the service contract ledger, stretching out for decades. The road's uneven stones, cracked by time, have become the stage for collective suffering. You observe each footfall, left foot forward, right foot down, left foot forward, right foot down, echoing the chain's metallic song and the distant crash of waves. Each repetition reminds you that your freedom was once a choice and is now a memory measured in iron. As the sea's murmur fades behind you, you face a bitter truth. Freedom is not a destination, but a journey you were never meant to take. When the column reaches the city limits, where dunes obscure the tiled road, you know the next chapter of your tragedy awaits, a tragedy of lost identity. Standing before splendor, hiding brutality, you inhale deeply, steadying your breath to match your march, and press onward the steps of souls still longing for hope, even as chains clatter at their sides. You step through the marble gate into Lysander's mansion, where official history records that noble Athenian families, especially after the reforms of Pericles in the latter half of the 5th century before the Common Era, amassed slaves and wealth to showcase their status. Along the corridors, mosaics depict Athena's legends and brilliant victories, while the scent of grape wine and rich perfumes mingles in the air, creating a luxurious veil that conceals cruelty. Demetrius, once a slave himself, now steward, advances beside you, his voice steady as he recites the house rules. Morning porridge of barley, evening bread and olives, bathe when ordered, wear what is provided, speak only when spoken to, never look a free person in the eye, never refuse any command, including entertainment. You note a strange fact. Archaeological surveys in the Kerameikos area unearthed the oldest lead water pipes in Athens, capable of channeling heated water from furnaces down to the basement baths, an innovation few know, highlighting how important preparing slaves for symposium could be. Demetrius leads you down stone steps and through a heavy door into the labyrinthine basement, an array of small chambers with thick walls that swallow every sob and whisper. Here, dim oil lamps flicker off your gaunt features. You meet Marcus, Alexios, and Philemon souls who have endured and preserved fragments of humanity. Marcus, your first friend, cites the Solon reforms of 591 before the Common Era, which abolished debt slavery, but reminds you that you never enjoyed that freedom. That is the official history pressing on your reality. Alexios, scarred across his brow, shares a little-known detail. Occasionally, Lysander allows select slaves to attend symposia to evaluate long-term potential, a bizarre selection method almost unique in the ancient Greek world. Philemon whispers, the symposium handbook rules passed among slaves. Bathe thoroughly, rub on olive oil so your skin gleams, don a thin tunic, and adorn yourself with jewelry to look pleasing for buyers by day, then slip into knight's role of obedient spectacle. You learn the strict reward-punishment system. The compliant receive an extra layer of blanket and a bit more bread. The rebellious face whipping and up to 3 days without water. These unwritten laws are ingrained in every breath you take. That first night, you hear lyre strings and laughter echo across the stone floor above. Demetrius leans in and hisses, "Don't let them steal the last voice inside you. You understand that to survive, you must retain a tiny kernel of self, a single comma in this dark symphony of a house. You step through the doors of the lavish banquet hall, where hundreds of flickering candles welcome you, masking the triumphant smiles and the soft clink of goblets from the free. Official records note that the symposium was a hallmark of Athenian culture in the 5th century before the Common Era, held after dinner for the nobility to discuss philosophy, poetry, and politics. The marble floor and bas-reliefs carved with Pericles' speeches still echo through time, reminding you of grandeur laced with danger. Before the feast begins, you are led to the bath area. A servant washes you with warm water infused with herbs, then rubs pure olive oil onto your skin until it gleams not out of compassion, but to raise your market price. A little-known fact. The Greeks sometimes mixed crushed seashell powder and olive wood ash into their bath oils, believing this blend firmed muscles and preserved fragrance longer. You feel oil seeping into every pore, candlelight reflecting off your polished skin, transforming you into a glittering specimen for tonight's presentation. You are draped in a thin, form-fitting tunic that barely covers you yet highlights every curve. In Plato's Symposium, the philosopher describes speakers debating between wine and music, but few mention the darker side. The symposium also served as a stage for the wealthy to trade human flesh. This is the academic controversy. Historians disagree. Was the symposium purely a venue for spiritual elevation, or fundamentally a theatre of power and lust? When the VIP guests, toga-clad scholars and scepter-wielding politicians enter, they debate innate virtue versus virtue through education, guided by Aristotle's theories. By day, lofty knowledge and rigorous argument reign. But at night, when wine overflows, they reveal their cruelty, bitter laughter, and hushed invitations that cut like blades. Your duties are simple: pour wine, offer fanning, present grapes, but every lingering look and grazing hand teaches you what entertainment truly means. The clink of goblets harmonizes with the lyre's strings into a gentle melody that hides muffled cries from the basement. A formal event recorded in the Athenian Chronicles notes that in the year 430 before the Common Era, Alcibiades once hosted a floating symposium on a magnificent ship, gifting prized slaves to his guests, demonstrating how the symposium doubled as a human exchange under a veneer of elegance. You imagine lanterns dancing on water, then glance at the iron collars binding you and your fellow captives. You slip through conversations like a shadow, avoiding probing gazes. When a philosopher nods solemnly about tolerance, you watch his hand flick the rim of his cup and quietly withdraw, as if afraid of revealing too much. You learn to hold your breath with each nod, clenching your fists behind your back to stop yourself shaking. Archaeological studies of Attic vases reveal images of slaves at symposia, not only pouring wine, but performing illustrative dances, an obscure form of naked dancing that sparks debate over whether these performers were artists or slaves. Some scholars argue this was an expression of artistic freedom, while others insist it was merely a disguised form of flesh trade. Night deepens, and the music and laughter linger in your ears as you descend back into the basement. You remind yourself, knowledge can be nothing more than a thin curtain concealing brutality and greed. High philosophy or recorded history cannot save you from your fate as merchandise. You clutch a single comma in this chaotic melody, holding on to the fragile ember of humanity so you do not vanish entirely. As the banquet hall's lights go out, you walk through the thick darkness of the basement, feeling cold stone beneath your feet. You know that each symposium, no matter how refined, conceals an artificial hell where knowledge is twisted into a tool to mask suffering. And you, forced to serve, quietly learn to keep your inner voice from being swallowed by that dazzling facade. You enter the private quarters where Demetrius needs no whip to break you. He employs 3 technologies: isolation, uncertainty, and erasure of your name. Official history records that Draco's law of 621 before the Common Era, though harsh and permitting death for minor crimes, inaugurated debt slavery, an outcome that isolated offenders, severing them from the community. Here, you cannot communicate with anyone. No letters, no whispers in your mother tongue. Even informal phrases among slaves are forbidden. Only pure Attic Greek commands are allowed. so you cannot express emotion or forge alliances. A strange little-known fact: archaeological digs in Keramikos uncovered a stele granting certain slaves a festival, day furlough during the Panathenaea. Yet Demetrius has erased that loophole. You have never known such humanitarian days, for he grants you no hope. Isolation means you remain alone in a small chamber, with only the drip of water and your own breathing for company. Next comes uncertainty. You never know when Demetrius will issue an order. A single drop of oil on your tunic can be punished. Thucydides mentions that nobles sometimes enforced archaic disciplinary codes recorded in the unofficial slave discipline manual, but it is unclear whether any written copy ever existed. This ambiguity keeps you in constant vigilance, your mind so tense you cannot distinguish day from night. Finally, erasure of your name. Scholars debate the practice of anonymization in Greek slavery. Historians split into two camps. One argues that slaves privately retained their birth names, while the other insists true names were wholly expunged and replaced with economic nicknames. Compliant and fair are the epithets assigned to you. You now answer only to fair or compliant by decree, while your birth name, perhaps echoing generations, becomes taboo to utter. Rituals are imposed from attire, identical tunics in the same color, meals, barley porridge and olives at fixed times, to lights out, oil lamps extinguished only after a free person's decree. Each rule embeds itself in your mind until you self-monitor, head bowed, steps measured, breath stifled. Each glance down at the rusty chain around your ankle fills you with emptiness. At night, when others lie still or pretend to sleep, you silently recite your old name in your mind, as though clutching a memory stone to preserve your humanity. A little-known insight. In a letter attributed to Demosthenes, slaves secretly carved their names into floor bricks as proof of existence. You once hoped to do the same, but Demetrius replaced every tile in one night. The effect of uncertainty is chronic mental fatigue. You dare not relax, fearing insubordination. When exhaustion prevails, modern psychology calls it voluntary submission, choosing obedience to avoid further suffering. In this dungeon, you understand that freedom becomes an illusion. The academic controversy persists. Did Greek slaves truly lose their names entirely, or quietly preserve them within? Some scholars cite early Athenian legal drafts allowing freed slaves to reclaim their birth names, implying names were not fully expunged. Yet many archaeological surveys find no slave-inscribed artifacts, suggesting names were indeed erased. Regardless, for you, theory matters little. Now, whenever Demetrius intones an order, you close your eyes and whisper your old name, as if holding a precious seed maintaining a tiny kernel of self. A resilient comma, defying the machinery designed to break you. You stand in the darkness of the basement, yet its hidden hierarchy operates like a deep-reaching mechanism. Official history notes that after Solon's reforms in Sauchumtamwe before the Common Era, debt slavery declined markedly, but the legal framework for household slaves in noble families flourished throughout the 5th century before the Common Era. Here, newcomers suffer most. You are the first crushed when every tiny mistake is punished mercilessly. A little-known fact. Archaeological digs in Attica uncovered fragments of pottery inscribed with bread ration markings for slaves, showing they devised a primitive token bread system as food-based rewards. You quickly learn to watch. A leftover piece of bread is more than sustenance, it is a status symbol. The privilege mechanism operates through silence and non-questioning. Marcus once escaped on a moonlit night, was captured, tied up, and left to bake in the sun as a warning and underground test of hierarchy. Alexios refused orders several times, then suffered 3 days of starvation. When he returned, his eyes were as cold as stone, a testament to the harsh survival strategy. You learn 2 main tactics: being present while absent, performing mechanical tasks with a hollow gaze, like straw stuffed into chains, and subtle finesse, anticipating your master's and guests' moods, altering your breathing and eye movements to avoid notice. Each choice carries a cost: bodily pain from the whip, or pieces of your soul shattered. A hot academic debate concerns the privilege paradox in ancient slavery, Does granting privileges to compliant slaves truly aid their survival, or is it merely a tool of oppression? Some historians argue that privileges create a dynamic structure, offering slaves pathways to safety, while others insist it's merely a means to sustain control by trading small freedoms for covert surveillance. In the gloom, small gestures breaking half a loaf for the weakest, tapping a finger 3 times to signal "danger tonight," become lifelines. Yet they can also betray you, when Demetrius's promise of good cooperation transforms you into a tool to deceive trust, only to be returned to your original place, a puppet and nothing more. You have become the perfect reflection of obedience after many seasons of imprisonment. Official history records that after Athens failed in the Peloponnesian War in the year 404 before Christ, thousands of prisoners were sold into slavery, creating one of the largest slave trades in the history of the city-state. Here, you predict the command before Demetrius can utter it, carry out every request precisely, and smile when ordered the reward is stability. A small window letting in light, regular meals, and a warmer blanket. Yet your heart has turned to stone. Perfection means numbness, when each act of submission takes away another small corner of humanity. A strange piece of information little known. Archaeology in the suburbs of Piraeus once discovered dense carvings on the walls of slave dungeons, recording words like, "I am still alive," or the names of family members, like a secret diary against oblivion. These inscriptions lay right beneath the bottom of porridge pots, where few looked, and were only discovered when archaeologists carefully sifted the soil. That proves hope, though extinguished, still quietly survived. But within you, that hope has settled into a silent death. Each passing day, the whispers of your inner self withered, leaving only the echo of commands. Amid the darkness of a life where humanity evaporates, one academic controversy remains heated. Did the hope of slaves truly extinguish when they became tools of profit? One side argues that constant surveillance and punishment erased completely every desire, turning slaves into living machines. The other side affirms that through small gifts, a piece of bread secretly shared, a furtive glance of sympathy, slaves still maintained a kind of micro-hope that helped them survive spiritually. That debate echoes in conferences on agency in ancient Greek slavery, but you, with your experience, have witnessed both the silent death of hope and its sudden flare like lightning. And that lightning comes unexpectedly. One day, Demetrius leads you to the slave market to buy new labor. You stand by the auction platform, eyes down the passage, then suddenly stop at the gaze of a boy of 12 years old, eyes wide with fear, a thin youth, exactly like you when first chained years ago. Memories surge violently like fire meeting wind, the warm smoke of the home kitchen, your father's raspy laugh, and your mother's tear quickly swallowed back. In that moment, hope thought long dead suddenly revived within you. You begin to murmur the names of your friends in the cell, share scraps of stories of your homeland through glances and clumsy gestures, holding on to fragile identity. You do not return to the person you once were, the wound is too deep to heal. But you know you are not entirely dead. For the first time, you want to slow the chain's march, not through loud rebellion, but through a small spark of hope, that one day, perhaps you will not only be merchandise. In that fleeting moment, you promise yourself to hold tightly to the comma of your being, so your story can still be written, if only by a faint glimmer of light amid the deepest darkness. One other night, the mansion of Lysander lit up brilliantly like a hall of knowledge, but you knew well the truth hidden beneath that light. The guests that day were scholars with grey hair, erudite politicians, some quoting Plato, others invoking Aristotle, all debating the matter of virtue, innate or educated, whether there existed a natural order that made some people born to be free, while others were only worthy of being slaves. You poured wine, your footsteps without a sound, your eyes lowered like an invisible curtain, but your ears listened to everything, and your mind absorbed the bitter irony. The very man lecturing about justice had just scolded you for spilling a drop of wine. The one proclaiming temperance laughed loudly when witnessing a fate humiliated. Official historical records state that in the 4th century before Christ, the philosopher Aristotle in his work Politics once wrote about the natural slave, those who were born to serve. That viewpoint shaped many generations of Greeks to believe there was a permanent lower class. But those very texts also sparked contradictions. If slaves were truly natural, why were whips and strict laws needed to maintain order? A strange piece of information little known. Many philosophical manuscripts found in Herculaneum, preserved by volcanic ash, contained marginal notes written by the hands of slaves working in the library. Those small lines, sarcastic or bitter in tone, were like silent rebuttals to the masters. They are traces proving that even in the darkness, slaves still observed and reflected, turning silence into a form of intellectual resistance. The academic controversy afterward revolved around the question, does knowledge lead to morality, or is it merely a tool to embellish power? One side argued that the Athenian elite truly believed in the system they built, while the other affirmed that they were fully aware of its cruelty but deliberately justified it. You, standing behind the wine tray, understood clearly. Knowledge here was not lacking, but excessive. Excessive to turn evil into reason. Excessive to drape velvet over despicable acts. That feeling was like a mirror flipping inside your head. From then on, you stopped asking, where did I go wrong? Each time you were beaten, scolded, commanded, you clearly saw the structure of oppression, where laughter and crying were not accidentally heard together, but because they needed each other. The louder the laughter, the more pitiful the crying. When you returned to the cellar, you sat under the mouldy wall, choosing to whisper names for each thing. Injustice, legitimization, double standards. Naming was a small yet important act. It made fear have sharp edges, and when it had edges, you could place your hand to hold on to a part of humanity. And you understood. Sometimes strength did not lie in resisting immediately, but in the ability to look straight into the essence, then keep for yourself a comma in the massive text of the House of Lysander. You have gone through many seasons, and each passing day feels like the steady rotation of a wheel that never stops. You have become so proficient that before Demetrius can even give an order, you already know what you must do. Just by looking at his eyes, you can predict the next move. You correct mistakes before being scolded, and when necessary, you smile just enough, not too little to be seen as cold, not too much to be suspected as false. In return, you are granted a few small privileges, a blanket thicker by one layer, a more regular meal, a small window opening to a square sky divided into 4 by iron bars. To the others in the cellar, you seem like the lucky one, favoured more. But they cannot see the part of your humanity slowly being worn away within you. Official records state that in Athens, during the 5th century before Christ, the number of slaves sometimes doubled the free population. It was the era when the city-state shone brightly, with drama, philosophy, and art reaching their peak. Yet beneath that brilliance, tens of thousands like you were nothing more than nameless tools, disappearing from official records. The self was buried even before the body was exhausted, a strange piece of information that few know. In several storage cellars unearthed in the Attica region, researchers discovered tiny carvings on the walls, not in Greek letters, but in triangles, circles, and straight lines. Many believe they were just scribbles, but some hypothesize they were personal codes of slaves, a secret way to say, I once existed. Those tiny traces, in silence, became proof of the desire not to disappear completely. In modern scholarship, a debate continues. Did Greek slaves still retain an awareness of self, or did they completely dissolve into the role of tools? One side argues that the system of oppression, with rules, whips, and isolation, eradicated all identity, turning humans into walking objects. The other side insists that even small actions such as keeping a stone as a keepsake or carving strange signs on walls show that slaves still maintained a minimal core of selfhood. You, in those nights sitting by the barred window gazing at the square sky, understand that feeling clearly. You begin to see yourself no differently than a household appliance in Lysander's house, durable, convenient, rarely broken, needing no care. Every action of yours becomes automated, as though body and mind had signed a silent pact, better to be numb than to face repeated pain. This system does not need to shout to keep you in line. It only needs the exhaustion that accumulates over time, for you to cooperate with your own numbness. When fatigue reaches its peak, resistance melts away, and the chains tighten further, with no hand pulling them. The next morning you continue the familiar routine: cleaning, pouring, bowing, nodding. Everything smooth, steady, silent. But in your head echoes the unyielding question: if the self is nothing but a shell, then where is the remaining soul? And if it still exists somewhere, even as a tiny speck of dust, how can you call it back? You follow Demetrius to the slave market, shoulders straight, face expressionless like a memorized lesson. You are displayed as living proof of successful training. A slave who knows how to be silent, how to bow, how to obey. But then, amid the crowd, a boy steps onto the platform. Black disheveled hair, wide frightened eyes, a thin, timid figure. He is only 12 years old. That moment feels like an unexpected slash. You see yourself years ago, when you were first dragged away from the red soil-roofed home. The smell of kitchen smoke creeps into memory. The sound of your father's hoarse laughter after work, the image of your mother bending down to carry water, all come rushing back. Greek history records, after each war, prisoners were often sold immediately at the agoras, public markets, turning communal spaces into places where human beings were priced. That is why only a few days after Athens conquered the island of Melos in 416 before Christ, all women and children there were auctioned. A little-known fact: archaeologists once discovered near Piraeus wooden tablets carved with slave prices by seasoned children often fetched higher prices in winter, when people needed indoor service rather than field labor. This shows that dehumanization lay not only in the trade itself, but was also calculated meticulously according to the weather. Modern scholars still debate: can childhood memory become a nucleus of resistance, helping slaves preserve their humanity, or is it merely a form of mental torture that makes them more desperate? Some argue that remembering only increases pain, forcing people to accept spiritual death to survive. But others believe that memory, however small, is still a seed of hope, something the system cannot uproot. You belong to the latter. Even though that boy was brought away immediately, no longer present in Lysander's house, his image followed you many nights, slipping into dreams once barren. And in the dream, you begin to whisper the names of those in the dark cell: Marcus, Alexios, Philemon. You recount small details: who trembles when pouring water, who likes the crispy edge of bread, who talks in sleep, calling for mother at night. What seem like trivial things gather into warm fragments of memory, like a small cloth pouch tied tightly to your heart. You know you cannot return to being the carefree child of the past. The cut from shackles has gone too deep, the blood long dried. But thanks to the boy on the wooden platform, you realize there is still a part of humanity that needs to be kept, that needs to be called by name. Hope does not blaze fiercely like fire, it returns like a timid warmth, enough to soften the icy shell wrapping your heart. And in that small warmth, you know you have not completely disappeared. Time flows quietly, and your body begins to tell its story with constant aches. Old scars change color, joints creak every time you sit or stand. Your entertainment value in the eyes of Lysander gradually decreases, no longer novel, no longer profitable. And then, one morning, the dry accounting words fall from the mouth of Demetrius. Sell to the mines. In official history, the silver mines of Laurion of Athens were once the most important source of finance, helping the city-state build the fleet that defeated Persia at Salamis in the year 480 before Christ. But along with that glory, thousands of slaves were banished to the mines, places without light, without fresh air, and with an average lifespan of only a few years. You know well, to the mines means a slow death, more brutal than the whip many times over. On the last night in the old chamber, when everyone was immersed in heavy silence, Marcus approached. He did not say much, only quietly pressed into your hand a piece of metal roughly sharpened. "You have the right to choose," Marcus whispered. That knife was not shiny like the weapons of the free, but heavy, crude, yet contained something that chains could never give: the ability to decide. A strange piece of information, little known. On a stone stele found near Sunium, there is an inscription of a promise by an escaped slave that he would leave behind a small iron tool for the next person. considering it a hand-passed mark like an invisible legacy. Many scholars believe this is only a legend, but archaeology in Lorien once discovered a piece of metal hidden in a rock crevice, not used for mining, like evidence of a whispered tale. You sit in the darkness, your fingers sliding across the cold blade. 3 paths appear before you. Escape, almost hopeless, for the way out is filled with guards and chains. Revenge, sweet for a moment but certain to extinguish quickly. Or self-ending proactive, keeping the final freedom, but a dead end. Each choice weighs on your chest like stone. The academic controversy revolves around the question, can the choice of death by a slave be seen as a form of resistance? One side argues it is only despair, a denial of life. The other side considers it an act of reclaiming final sovereignty by refusing to let the system decide the moment of ending. This debate remains unresolved to this day. Dawn arrives, light streaming through the narrow crack above. You do not use the knife for yourself. Instead, you hide it in a secret rock crevice in the chamber, where someone later may find it just as Marcus once did for you. Your hand is empty as you step into the yard, but your heart is not empty. You have left behind a fragment of legacy, a kernel of choice, for the next person. When the chain tightens around your ankle, you suddenly understand. There are victories that require no shouting, no bloodshed. It is when a person about to leave the world of the house still manages to give to the next the right to choose. And in a place where every choice has been stolen, just one crude knife, hidden behind a rock, is enough to become the symbol of silent freedom. The journey to the mining camp passes through rugged, rocky slopes and rows of pines rustling in the wind. You cannot run the chains, and the guards make that impossible, but deep inside, you want to preserve every detail of ordinary life. The sound of leaves brushing, sunlight sliding over stone surfaces, the resinous scent of pine. Because you know well, ahead lies a slow death, where every breath carries the taste of dust and blood. Official history of Athens records that the silver mines of Lorien were the key source of finance for Athens' naval strength in the 5th century before Christ. Thanks to this silver flow, the fleet of triremes was built, contributing to victory at Salamis against Persia. But behind that brilliant achievement, tens of thousands of slaves like you disappeared into the darkness of the deep pits, without names, without tombstones. A little-known fact: in some abandoned mining tunnels, archaeologists once discovered small carvings on rock walls, symbols of birds, olive blossoms, or simple marks. Not belonging to the system of miner symbols, most likely they were secret windows of slaves, drawings leading imagination out of darkness, toward the sky. They were like traces of an underground society, where people affirmed, "We once existed." Oh, an academic controversy still revolves around the question, in the hell of the Lorien mines, could slaves form a true community? One side argues that the harsh conditions and strict surveillance made each person care only for themselves. The other side, based on archaeological evidence and indirect records, affirms that a real underground society did exist based on silent sharing, secret signals, and commemorative rituals. You clearly feel the latter side is right. In the dark pit, the absurd quota made each day measured only by the number of stone baskets to carry. But amid the hard labour, a quiet community arose. The weak were covered shifts, for small portions of food passed hand to hand through silent agreements. The signal of 3 knocks meant danger, 2 knocks meant safety. Most important was the ritual of calling names in rare short breaks. Each person in turn whispered the names of those who had passed, telling a small memory, a smile, a gait, or a final word. Each story erected an invisible tombstone, carved by sound. You join this flow, and when your turn comes, you say, "A child sold, a youth hiding a knife for the next." Your back feels lighter by half a beat, the burden shared. In the darkness of the mine, resistance is not about breaking chains, but about preserving the way of life through synchronized breathing and the language of stone where history is written by heartbeats. Death comes to you not by a whip, nor by a sentence. It comes silently, slowly, like drops of water falling endlessly eroding stone. After many seasons of inhaling dust in the mine, your lungs begin to lose breath like a stream dried to its bottom. Each breath is a struggle, Each cough drags on as if you are walking forever in a tunnel without light. One time, a miner cave in, while others managed to rise. You were slower than usual. The cough lingered, echoing in your chest like a cracked bronze bell. You know, the end is quietly crawling closer. Official history of Athens once recorded that slaves in the Laurian mines rarely lived beyond 10 years. Children sent down often never reached adulthood. Those dry statistics reflect exactly what you are experiencing. A life not yet leaving marks on the skin has already been filled with stone dust in the lungs. A human life, wrapped only in the number of ore baskets carried up. No tombstone, no grave, not even a name to be called. A strange piece of information little known. In some old mines, archaeologists found children's handprints on rock walls, so small they could have belonged to those only 7 or 8 years old. It is unclear whether that was accidental during work or a deliberate act, a silent way of signing to prove we once existed here. Those handprints, pressed into cold stone, have lived longer than the bodies of the children who placed them. You lie on your side on rubble, comrades gathering around. They have no medicine, no way to keep you, only hands placed on your chest, transmitting a little warmth. It is both rescue and farewell. In that moment, you hear their voices whispering, reading out the list of those who have gone before and those who remain. Each name is a stone, placed in the right spot, building the wall, supporting your heart, already thinning like torn cloth. You close your eyes, not out of surrender, but because you have seen enough. You have seen the heroic wall mosaics in Lysander's mansion, the drying yards where bodies were bruised, swallowed stone dust in the mine, witnessed faces calling each other's names in the dark. For you, that was already a life. In the final breath, a small promise rises among the circle of people. We will remember. You no longer have the strength to speak, but that word touches you like the last thread holding onto the part of humanity not completely lost. And then, your breath fades, like an oil lamp extinguished in a room no one lights again. But your story does not stop there. It slides out of the dark pit, clinging to the voices of your friends, crossing dusty roads, slipping into libraries where people still debate justice and morality. It weaves into brightly lit cities of another time, where people still sit on stone benches or wooden tables to argue about the concept of freedom. There, the cruel system only wears a new garment, more refined, more polished, but at its core still needs crying to feed laughter. An academic controversy still exists. Should the history of slaves be considered central to understanding Greek civilization, or only the background not worth mentioning? One side affirms that Athenian civilization could not have existed without slave labor, that every victory and every philosophy was built on the backs of chained humans. The other side still wants to preserve the distinction, considering the contribution of slaves only as backstage support. But your story, the story of the last breath in a dusty mine, is proof. Without the backstage, there would never be a stage. Your story does not demand anyone be afraid, but demands they remember. Remember that knowledge only has meaning when it is strong enough to stop a hand tightening another's throat. Remember that laughter on the upper floors always has a background sound. The background is the crying drowned in the deep pits. And sometimes, just one small piece of steel, hidden in a crack of stone, is enough to open an escape route. If there is someone, in another time, hearing this story before going to sleep, may they sleep more peacefully, not by forgetting, but by knowing. Just one name called at the right time, one hand placed gently on the chest, can keep for someone their fragile humanity. And your final breath, blended with the echo of comrades, will go further than the darkness of the mine, to remind that history is not only written by victories, but also by the silent existence of those who have disappeared.